Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You are on the Steady Coach. And today we are going to be talking about the very important topic of parenting and caregiving when you are recovering from chronic dizziness symptoms. Whether you're dealing with a known diagnosis like PPPD, MdDS, or vestibular migraine, or if you don't have a diagnosis but have medically unexplained chronic dizziness symptoms that your physicians aren't able to figure out and aren't able to help you with, parenting and caregiving during this time is incredibly difficult. In this video, we're going to be talking about that, and I'm going to share 5 principles that you can use to modify your approach to parenting during this recovery process. These 5 principles will not only help you feel better about your own recovery and give you a sense of safety, they will also help promote safety for your kids and your family as well. The first thing I want to say is that if you are struggling with parenting and caregiving while you're dealing with this neural circuit dizziness stuff, you are so not alone. It is so hard. I would say that out of the clients that I work with, it is probably in the top 3 concerns that people voice to me, and it brings up so much distress, so much shame, so much guilt. This is something we must talk about and work with for your recovery. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, Yonit says that stress has something to do with neural circuit dizziness. And you're right, stress does have something to do with it. And then you may be thinking to yourself, oh no, but I have all this non-negotiable stress because I have to take care of my kids, or I have to take care of a parent or loved one. And we're going to address that a little more in depth in a future video. But what I'll say here is that external stress does not determine the amount of stress that you feel on the inside about a particular situation. And it is my hope with the tools that we're going to be talking about today that even though we can't necessarily modify a lot of the external stress you're under, you are going to relate to that stress differently. And this will produce a totally different physiologic response to the stress that you're under, which will help, again, change the way your nervous system is responding to symptoms and to stress overall, leading ultimately to recovery. And for those of you who need a refresher on how neural circuit dizziness works, please pause the video here and watch the Basics of Neural Circuit Dizziness video that I will link to in the video description. So if you're struggling to parent right now, you are struggling with 2 categories of challenges. The first category are those that are external, and these are often the ones people are thinking about. So I am unable to drive my son to his baseball game. I don't have the endurance to last through my daughter's birthday party. I'm not able to take my kids to the after-school activities that they want to go to. I used to be able to play and take my kids to the movies, and I can't do that right now. There may also be some struggles or some arguments with your partner if you have one, or other family members who are trying to help perhaps, but there's now a renegotiation of family duties because you simply can't, in the present moment, the way you're feeling right now, do the things that you were doing before the dizziness started. Some of you are also suffering from attacks of scary symptoms that have a direct impact on your family. Also more of an external challenge. The challenges that I'm most concerned with, though, are not those less negotiable external challenges. Those are the reality as it is right now. Now, before I say what I'm about to say, I want to be clear. From my perspective, those external challenges are temporary because you are going to recover. However, for the moment, they are less negotiable than the internal challenges that arise inside many of us in response to those external challenges. And those include things like horrible guilt and shame over not being a good parent, feeling helpless or hopeless, feeling worried about your children's futures and how your condition right now might be affecting them, the grief that you're dealing with over the loss of time and capabilities that you had before the symptoms started. And then there's the whole matter of this identity shift that tends to happen when people are dealing with long-term symptoms. All of these things are really hard to navigate when you're also just struggling to live life day by day. So if you're nodding and saying yes to everything that I've said so far, I think you're going to find that following 5 principles really helpful in navigating especially some of those internal challenges. And I promise you that if you're able to implement some of the changes that I'm about to talk about, it will lead not only to a reduction in internal stress in all the categories that we talked about, but also a reduction in external challenges as well. Principle number 1, get clear on your identity. And I'm not talking about the identity that you have now, but the identity that you want to have as you recover from chronic dizziness. Now, before I continue with some tips on how to approach this, I want to say that positive psychology and many Western cultures are going to have you believe that this means just visualizing your successes. Recovery from chronic dizziness is an inside job, not an outside job. We don't want to spend time visualizing everything on the outside going well. We want to spend time understanding what it would look like and feel like on the inside when we are doing well. So what you're going to do here is you're going to imagine who you want to be when you have recovered from chronic dizziness symptoms. Who is that person? And here are some tips. Don't think about this in terms of who you used to be. There were wonderful qualities about you, and there were wonderful aspects of your life. You are now in the process of some kind of transformational change, because that's what happens when someone's dealt with a chronic condition. Someone has to go through a process of transformational change. You're going to change whether you like it or not. So now is your chance. It's a huge opportunity for you to think about what qualities served you well and which qualities maybe didn't serve you so well. So for example, for those of you out there who were highly detail-oriented perfectionists, you may say, you know, the detail-orientedness was serving me well. I like doing things right, but the perfectionism was putting a ton of pressure on me and making me feel really stressed out and worthless all the time. So again, this is your chance to reach for the stars and imagine, what does that post-dizziness person look like, feel like on the inside? The other thing I want you to think about is to frame this in terms of do's, not don'ts. So instead of thinking of this as, I don't want to have this trait, I don't want to be dependent, I don't want to feel guilty, I want you to think about the things you do want to do, what kind of person you would be if you did those things. So not just, I'd like to stand up for myself. Ask yourself, what kind of person would stand up for him or herself? Do you want to be courageous? Do you want to be adaptable and flexible? Do you want to be a little more go with the flow? Think about who that person is on the inside, not the behaviors that person would have. And then, this is when the magic happens. You start to ask yourself the question, especially when there are tricky or sticky situations coming up in your everyday life, what would that person do? How would that person react to this particular situation? What would an adaptable person do when my 7-year-old doesn't want to tie her shoes? What would a courageous person do if my teenage son is pushing boundaries? This process of transformational change, I've often said, is like watching paint dry. It's not very exciting moment to moment. It's these small shifts that are really going to change you. Now, why are we talking about transformational change in the context of parenting? Because I believe you have to be very, very clear on your values in order to shift how you're thinking about parenting in this moment. And that brings me to principle number 2, values. Ask yourself, what are the values that I want to pass down and model to my children? When you are blaming yourself for not being able to do all those external activities that you used to be able to do, what are you teaching your children? You're inadvertently teaching your children that their value is only in what they're able to do. In other words, that their value is extrinsic. It's dependent on what other people think. and what they're able to accomplish on the outside. Is that the value that you want to pass down to your children? Or do you want to teach them that they have intrinsic value, that your children are valuable and lovable regardless of the accomplishments that they have on the outside? Now, there are obviously other values that you can think about here, and I'm going to link below in the video description to an intrinsic value quiz that can help you find what some of those values are. But the main thing I want you to think about here is, what am I modeling to my children when I'm being really hard on myself over not being able to do everything I used to do? And what am I modeling to my children when I am being honest about how I'm feeling and modeling self-compassion and unconditional self-acceptance? It's all well and good for you to tell your children that they're lovable for who they are on the inside. Your children learn from how you relate to yourself. When you relate to yourself in your current situation right now with love and respect and acceptance, and you show your children that you can go through hard things and maybe not be able to do everything that you used to be able to do, but that you're still lovable and valuable, you are teaching your child to relate to him or herself in the same way. If you need a little more help exploring this, this is something that's excellent to work through via journaling. So you can journal about your own values. You can do that quiz I mentioned, or you can consider working through my workbook or the journaling prompts that are in my membership community. Those all help walk you through understanding why you might not be treating yourself with unconditional love and respect, and helping you create a little bit of an action plan around how you can treat yourself a little more in alignment with those values. The third principle is skill in working with emotions. I want you to ask yourself, what do my children actually need to learn from me? What is the most important thing that they can learn from me? We've already talked about values. Just as high up on that list is emotional regulation. Similarly to values, your children learn emotional regulation based on what they see from you, both in how you relate to their feelings and in how you relate to your own feelings. Now, I know when you're dealing with chronic dizziness symptoms, you have a bit of a dilemma because a lot of what you're feeling right now is fear. But behind that fear, there's also a lot of grief over time that you've lost, over the medical testing that you've done. You may have a lot of anger toward people who weren't supportive or doctors who gave you the wrong message. You want to be able to work through these emotions and normalize to your child that when someone goes through something hard, like what you're going through, it's normal and okay to feel sad, to feel angry, to feel grief. And I know this can feel a little tricky because sometimes the emotions that you have, especially about your symptoms, can be so overwhelming that they immediately pull you into a pit of despair. And when you're dysregulated, it certainly doesn't help your children learn regulation. So my suggestion here is learning to work with those emotions more skillfully yourself and modeling this to your children. Having proactive conversations with them about the experience that you're going through, rather than leaving them to guess what's going on. Children are very, very sensitive to the emotions of their caregivers. They know you are struggling. And if you proactively approach them and say, hey, I'm going through some difficult times right now, and I want you to know that sometimes I feel really sad and I cry. Can you tell me about a time when you feel sad and you cry? And just open conversations like this. You're teaching your child to expect that you're going to have emotional moments and for them to feel safe with those moments even when they're powerful, even when the emotions feel like they're going to take over. This is seriously one of the most important skills you can teach your children. And I know this because many of the adults I see do not have this skill, and that is one of the reasons that they end up with chronic dizziness symptoms in the first place. If you need a little more help in determining how to work with emotions, I have a video on emotions that I'm also going to link to in the video description. The fourth principle is presence. Ask yourself, what do my children actually need from me? And when I ask people this question, people's first instinct is to tell me about a whole bunch of things they think they ought to be doing, but that their children don't actually need. My child needs me to be there for her during her after-school activities. My son needs me to be at karate or at boxing every day. My daughter needs me to make her a really great birthday party. My children need me to place a bunch of presents under the Christmas tree. Again, you're gonna be telling yourself these stories about all these things you used to be able to do and that your children are gonna miss and that they're gonna need. And that is not only not true, but it is going to send you off into spirals of shame and guilt. The thing that your children need the most from you is your presence. And even when you're dealing with the most awful chronic dizziness symptoms, presence is something you can actively work on and actively give to your children, no matter how bad you feel. And it may not look the same as you being able to drive them around right now. It may not look the same as you being really engaged in playtime or taking them on roller coasters right now. But your presence, the quality of your presence, your undivided attention and focus on them is something you can do no matter how bad you feel. And that is what they actually need from you. So find ways, write down a list of ways that you can show up with more presence in your child's life with whatever limitations you have right now, reminding you that this will change. You are not always going to feel the way that you feel right now. This is temporary. You're going to get better. And with your presence, your children will feel safe. And that brings me to the fifth and final principle, alignment. Having gone through all of these questions that I've already asked today, you want to ask yourself the question, where am I misaligned? Where is my guilt, shame, fear holding me back from implementing these changes that I just came up with? Where is the narrative or the story that I have about myself or my feelings about my identity holding me back from making some of the changes that I could make right now that would positively affect my kids and positively affect me? Another really good question here is, how can I reparent myself in the way that I want to parent my children? This relates back to working with emotions, working with values. If you are demonstrating parenting yourself or treating yourself in the way that you want to parent your children, your kids are going to notice that coherence. They're going to notice that what you're saying and what you're doing and the way you treat them and the way that you treat yourself are all in alignment. And when things make sense, when things are aligned, you feel safer and they feel safer. And that is what this entire video and the entire chronic dizziness recovery journey is all about. Creating safety instead of danger in your nervous system. And we accomplish that here in many ways, with education, with breathing, with exercise, and here with a frank discussion with yourself about the kind of parent you want to be and what you're actually modeling to your children when you are not aligned with those values. My goal for you is for you to feel empowered by this video, to feel like you have the ability to make changes today that are going to make you feel safer. And if you implement these things, I can tell you, your children and your whole family, everyone is going to feel safer. That is going to lead you to recovery. I hope you found this video helpful. I'm a parent myself. I know how hard it is to parent even when you're not dealing with symptoms. And I just want you to know that you are not alone in this. And I'm so proud of you for making it all the way through this video. I know that parenting can bring up so much shame and guilt for people, especially when you're not feeling well. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. You can leave questions and comments below. Please like the video, share it if you found it helpful, subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye.